Welcome to the USTM IAS Academy. Myself Vaibhav Patil, Faculty of Geography and Environment. जैसे आप सबको पता है कि वेस्ट एशियन क्राइसिस अभी भी ख़त्म होने का नाम नहीं ले रहे. ऑल्दो निगोशिएशंस आर गोइंग ऑन, सीज फायर हैज़ अनाउंस्ड. बस इसके जो रेमिफिकेशन है, इसके जो इम्पैक्ट है एंटायर वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमी पे हो रहे हैं, उसके लिए इंडिया कोई एक्सेप्शन नहीं है. तो हमारे साथ यहाँ पे मौजूद है हमारे डायरेक्टर सर एच सिद्धू सर. तो मैं सर से यही जानने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ कि ये जो वेस्ट एशियन क्राइसिस है, इस पे इसके जो इंडियन इकोनॉमी पे जो इम्पैक्ट हो रहे हैं वो थोड़ा हमें सर डिटेल में बता दीजिए प्लीज.
Thank you, Mr. Vaibhav Patil ji. You know that Israel and US attacked on Iran on 28th of February 2026. So, in which the supreme leader of Iran was killed. Iran obviously retaliated, and this led to the beginning of the war in the region, which is known as the West Asian crisis in your terms. So, there are the multidimensional implications of this war on the entire global economy. As you said that India is not an exception, so obviously Indian economy has also been affected by this crisis. So what are the various consequences as far as the Indian economy is concerned of this West Asian crisis? We will discuss it one by one.
Sure.
So, beginning from the depreciation of Indian rupee, so we can say that due to this crisis, the petroleum prices have increased all over the world. As far as India's imports are concerned, India is a major importer of crude oil. 85 to 90% of its requirements are imported from the rest of the world. And similarly, approximately 50% of the crude oil needs of the world are supplied from this Gulf region only. That is through the Strait of Hormuz. And India's crude oil import is also 20% of the total import that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. And you know that due to this crisis, due to this war, the Strait of Hormuz has been affected. The transshipment and the cargo movement through the Strait of Hormuz has been impaired due to that. Iran is sitting at a very strategic position right above the Strait of Hormuz. So, Strait of Hormuz in a way that has been blocked, or you can say passage through the Strait of Hormuz is not as smooth as it was earlier.
Restrict कर दिया.
Yes, restrict कर दिया है. And because of the effect on the supply chains of this war, so obviously the crude oil prices have been shoot up. So the prices which were approximately $78 per barrel in the beginning of the March, those have crossed nearly $120 per barrel in just a short span of time of these 2-3 months only. So when the crude oil prices have increased, since India is a major importer of the crude oil, so obviously the demand for dollar in India's case has increased, and it has given strength to the dollar and the weakening of the Indian rupee in relation to the dollar. So in just a 1 month span of time, Indian rupee has slided down by approximately 10%. It has crossed the mark of 96 rupees per dollar even, and it is depreciating continuously. So such a continuous fall in the Indian rupee against the dollar, that is not a good sign. Though as far as the economy is concerned, as far as the economists' opinion are concerned, that the depreciation to a certain extent, if it is not sustainable, if it is not continuous, that is considered a good sign. But the continuous fall and at such a faster rate, this is not considered a good sign as far as the Indian economy is concerned. Second thing is that the foreign remittances which India receives from the Indian diaspora that is working
In Gulf
in the rest of the world. Only in the Gulf region, approximately 9 million Indians are working there. They contribute nearly 40% of the total remittances from the rest of the world to India, which amounts to approximately $135 billion per year. So, in the wake of the rise in the crude oil prices and fall in the foreign remittances by the Indian diaspora, this has increased pressure or stress on the forex reserves of the country, so which has led to the depreciation of Indian rupee. And the depreciation of Indian rupee in itself has many implications as far as the economy is concerned. Those we will discuss side by side. The second point which I need to mention here, that is the capital outflight. So, if we talk about the foreign portfolio investors or foreign institutional investors, they are the passive investors basically, who are from the foreign countries and they invest in the Indian stock market, in the stocks, debt securities or mutual funds, just to gain the profits only. So when the rupee is depreciating continuously, so their investment in India, that is getting eroded. So there is an atmosphere of fear as far as the investors are concerned. So in such a scenario, they prefer to withdraw their capital from the country and to invest it into safer havens, because in parallel the bond yield in the US has also increased, approximately 4 to 4.5% it has increased. It has reached that point. So when the return is good from the American market, obviously they will prefer to shift their capital to that safer haven. And the second point which is there, though that is not directly related to this crisis, but I would like to mention it here. Investor always like to invest in the sunrise sectors. Today's sunrise sectors are those sectors which have the future, that is the AI and the semiconductor industries. India doesn't have an, you can say, edge as far as these two industries are concerned. Taiwan, South Korea, US are doing very well in these sectors. So that is why the investors like to withdraw their money from the Indian market and they are shifting it to those sunrise sectors in the economies outside. So though this is not directly related with the West Asian crisis, but I have mentioned it here.
इसलिए तो उसको hot money बोलते हैं.
Yes. And similarly, as far as the foreign direct investment is concerned, so foreign direct investors come to India with the motive of the active investment, or they are the active investors. They participate actively in the management of the corporate bodies, and they bring their capital for long term, not for the short term to the country.
Development.
So in the wake of the continuous depreciation of the rupee, so their investment is also getting eroded. So in this wake or in such a scenario, even the foreign direct investors don't like to reinvest their profits into the Indian market again. So they are also withdrawing their money or the profits and shifting those profits to the rest of the world, to other countries, we can say. even the Indian corporates are also hesitating to reinvest their profits into Indian markets in such a scenario because because the rupee is depreciating and their capital is getting eroded. So they are shifting their capitals to other areas, to other countries. So this obviously has very serious implications for the Indian economy, particularly an economy which is largely import dependent. So this is there, and according to an estimator, this crisis is going to give a fiscal blow to the Indian economy of nearly $2.1 trillion by the year 2027. So when the fiscal blow will hit the Indian economy, so the fiscal deficit of the government will obviously increase. If the fiscal deficit increases, the government would borrow more funds from the market, and this would cause a crowding out effect. So crowding out effect, when government borrows more money and leaving lesser money in the market for the private investors to borrow. So this leads to the liquidity crunch in the market. This leads to the scarcity of the capital for investment or funds for investment. And this leads to the increase in the interest rates also. So this also, you can say, affects the investment in the economy and the foreign direct investment also, because when the availability of capital is less in the market and the rates of interest are higher, the investors would hesitate to invest in the country. So this is the second major implication, we can say. The third major point which is there, that is the inflation. Inflation is the continuous rise in prices. So when the crude oil prices increase, then the Indian economy is obviously hit. In the past also we have seen it, and in the current scenario also. As far as the wholesale price index is concerned, in March, the wholesale price inflation which is there, that has reached 3.88%. And if the trend continues, it may touch the 4% mark or 4.5% mark also. As far as the this consumer price index is concerned, CPI inflation rate, so this has also increased by 1.5% in the country. And if the situation remains the same, means the trend persists, the crisis is not resolved, then it may rise to the 2% also. Means rise by the 2% as well. So this is the inflation scenario in the country. So when the inflation hits the country, the prices rise in the country, then obviously the middle section people or the lower section people, they are worstly hit, and poverty further deepens in the country. So this is not a welcome, you can say, scenario for the entire economy. And as per the estimates, the fertilizer prices have also shoot up by 50% in the wake of this West Asian crisis. And the projections are there that this rise in the fertilizer prices may put an additional subsidy burden on the government to the amount of 300 billion rupees. So this is also not a welcome sign for the Indian economy. Next is the industrial production. So according to the statistics which I was seeing when I was reading the newspapers or magazines, So the index of industrial production of 8 core industries that has been contracted by 0.4% in the month of March, which is the worst performance of this core sector of the Indian economy in the past 19 months. So if the core sector is affected, then obviously it will affect the other industries also, like the electrical industry and
मतलब जो
this
भी parasite हो सब supplementary
automobiles and
industry
all
Sorry.
and all. So those will be hit further. Next important point which I would like to discuss here, that is the strategic petroleum reserves. So strategic petroleum reserves is an indicator of the vulnerability of an economy to such geopolitical crisis. India has a strategic petroleum reserve of 21 million barrels only. And if we see the scenario in the comparable countries or comparable economies, in Japan it is 263 million barrels strategic petroleum reserve, and in China it is 1,397 million barrels strategic petroleum reserve.
Multiple times.
So we can see that India is more energy insecure country in or from this point of view, if we compare it with China or with Japan. So the less amount of the or quantity of the strategic petroleum reserve also not a good sign for the industry, and it means that a threat is looming on the this industrial sector because of the energy scarcity. Anytime the industry may be hit hard, and it is happening also in our country. We are seeing in one way or another. And the next thing is that this according to the statistics, the area under the paddy cultivation has also reduced by approximately 2 lakh hectare in this particular season in India. There are two main reasons. One is the El Nino effect, strong El Nino, which is expected, and second is the increase in the fertilizer prices due to the West Asian crisis. And you know that agriculture is the primary sector. If the primary sector is affected, then obviously the service sector and the industry would also be affected. And it has serious implications for the food security of the country also.
और आज के ही न्यूज़ में दिया गया है कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस एल नीनो इंडियन ओशन डाइपोल के भी कंडीशन जो है वो भी फेवरेबल नहीं है इंडिया के लिए. तो मुझे लगता है ये और इम्पैक्ट जो मल्टीप्लाई होने वाला है.
Yes. So that means very poor monsoon is expected in the coming season in India. So then the next implication of this West Asian crisis, that is in terms of the CAD, which is the current account deficit. So according to an estimate, for every $1 per barrel rise in the crude oil prices, India's CAD widens by $15 billion. So which is approximately 1.5% of the GDP. And if this crisis is not resolved soon, or if this crisis is prolonged, so it may touch 2% of the GDP also, which is the current account deficit, and that will further lead to the depreciation of the Indian rupee, and may have other implications also. So the combined effect of all these things, depreciation of the rupee and fall in the foreign remittances to the country, stress on the forex reserves, capital outflight from the country, and this fiscal hit, which is to the Indian economy to the tune of approximately $2.1 trillion by 2027, a rise in the rate of inflation, increase in the fertilizer prices, fall in the index of 8 core industries, and this fall in the area under the paddy cultivation or so. So this would obviously impact the GDP of the country. So the projected GDP is going to come down by approximately 1 percentage point according to the estimate, right, in this scenario. And estimates also suggest that for every $10 increase in a barrel of the crude oil price, India's GDP is hit by approximately 0.5%. So that means fall in the GDP, or fall in the GDP growth rate, not in the GDP. Fall in the GDP growth rate means the Indian economy is not expanding as per the expectation or according to its potential. And this would further lead to fall in the employment rate in the country, because on the one sector the industrial sector is hit, on the other sector the agriculture is also going to be affected. So the combined effect would be on the unskilled laborers. So they are going to be hit hard by this crisis.
Disproportionately.
Yes, disproportionately we can say. So, and it may cause the deepening of the poverty further in the Indian society. So these are the various implications of the West Asian crisis for the Indian economy. I have tried to cover most of the points, but still in such a short span of time, due to the limitation of time, we can not go into the detailed discussions of these things. But still I have tried my best to cover the various aspects.
You actually covered nicely all these points with facts and data. और वही इम्पोर्टेंट होता है, जब हम कोई जनरल स्टेटमेंट देते हैं और उसको जस्टिफाई करते फैक्ट और डेटा के साथ, तो ऑथेंटिसिटी और उसकी बढ़ जाती है. और ऐसे ही मुझे लगता है कि वीडियो होने चाहिए. और जो हमारे एस्पिरेंट है तो उनके लिए हम ऐसे ही और नए वीडियो के साथ आएंगे, जिसमें आपको कोई इम्पोर्टेंट टॉपिक रिसेंट चल रहा है तो आपके एग्ज़ाम के लिए, स्पेशली मेंस, इंटरव्यू और प्रिलिमिनरी हो, उसके लिए हेल्पफुल रहे. तो हम ज़रूर एक कोशिश करेंगे कि ये जो वीडियो हम बना रहे हैं आपके लिए हेल्पफुल हो.